Chapter 13 of The Flying Eyes by J. Hunter Holly. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 13. The earth slanted under Link's feet, and he journeyed down it toward the approaching blackness. It was a huge ramp that met his steps, 50 feet wide, smoothed over by the thousands of feet which had traversed it previously. Down and down it went, until the sunlight from the rear became dim and dimmer, and then was gone entirely. Down, down into the innards of the earth. How far, he wondered, and how would he see in the pitch blackness of inner earth? The zombie people around him had no need to see. They were being led. He was not. Now he was truly a blind man walking among the dead. When the light faded entirely, he closed his eyes. He couldn't stand the sense of blindness, couldn't stand to keep them open and see nothing. So he closed them and moved close to the rest of the captives, letting their shoulders, bumping against him, be his guide. Something touched his eyes, a pressure, a soft hint of vision, and he opened them. It was no longer dark. The ramp and the dirt sidewalls were lit with a wispy glow, violet and purplish. It grew stronger with each step forward until he could see again, make out forms, then even the faces of the zombies. It was dull light, but a light that he was thankful for, and ahead the damp ended. A sheer wall rose abruptly, marking the ramp's end. The people spread out of their close pack, and as they did, he got a good view of the wall and what made the ramp end. A huge metal shape blocked the passage. It was only half visible, towering above him, the other half embedded in the dirt which had stopped its forward movement. He studied it as unobtrusively as possible. He couldn't be positive, but the overall shape of the thing brought to mind a ship of some sort. A spaceship? He recalled the reports of a great roaring light passing over the town and the explosion in the woods. Then this metal giant had made the light, and the explosion had been its impact and burrowing descent into the earth. Someone shoved him, and he moved on. The zombie people waited for no one. They plowed ahead, oblivious to anything in their path. He shuffled with them towards the ship, then at the end of the ramp turned to the right. Before him was a large natural cavern, and the glow from it was stronger. As he entered the cavern, the glow bloomed brighter, and still keeping his pose of limpness, he looked up from under his eyelids to find its source. The discovery was a surprise that sucked out his breath. Over by the wall, glowing brightly so that every movement was outlined, was a semicircle of bloated, shapeless creatures. They were huge and living, and they glowed with the violet light, which emanated from their skins, changing shade with their emotion. Beneath the glowing, they were black and shiny, with hides of a slimy leather texture. He counted quickly, and there were 9 of them. Zombies were everywhere, sitting huddled against the walls, crouching together in groups. They seemed to fill the cavern. Some were filthy from their stay in the dirt. Others had only lately arrived. They were all blank-eyed from hypnosis, and some had already taken on the idiot stare of mindlessness that Wes had acquired here in this pit. He was sickeningly near the circled monsters now. He sank to the floor as the others did, and sat still, staring at the dirt in front of him. Out of the corner of his eye, he had a slant-eyed view of the glowing giants. Everything they did seemed to be in slow motion, sluggish and heavy, as though they weighed a ton and could not lift their arms. Arms they had, fat, long arms of amorphous shape, and legs they had, of the same appearance. Their ears and mouths were not visible, and as he looked them over he recoiled, and had to forcibly keep his hands from flying to cover his mouth. Some of the giant things had 2 eyes. Some of them had only 1. Yet the monsters with 1 had sockets for 2. The socket for the missing eye glaring redly, revoltingly empty. As he continued to watch, one of the flying eyes floated into the cavern. It hovered, its 6-foot-length dwarfing Link beneath it. And then as it had on that first day at the ball game, it began to change size. It shrank from 6 to 4 feet, to 2 feet, to 1. And when it reached the size of about 8 inches, it floated away from him and toward one of the monsters. It stopped before the glowing thing, turned around, and backed into the empty socket in the thing's face. It was impossible. Yet he had seen it. One moment the socket had been empty and a 6-foot flying eye had hovered near. The next, the socket was full and the flying eye was filling it. How? He searched frantically for some rational word that might stem the rise of panic. He found one. Teleportation. The glowing creatures had the power not only to hypnotize, but to teleport part of their bodies to another place, to send their eyes out from their sockets, to skim the earth with their flying eyes, see with them, and capture with them. The mentality behind the hypnosis, then, was within these grotesque glowing things. The eyes were merely their instruments. Link closed his eyes against the sickening pull of his stomach. He had to gather strength. The swirls and shadows still waited just beyond his mind, ready to pounce and take him. He renewed his fight against them, and when he had them under control, he kept his eyes shut to give him a chance to think without constant revulsion at what he saw around him, to think sanely and logically. The big creatures had obviously come to Earth in the metal spaceship. The flying eyes were not separate entities, but part of the creatures themselves, teleported over the Earth to bring in captives. When the eyes were wounded, the creatures who owned them, using their special mental powers, healed them, and the creatures glowed. This last fact brought him thinking up short. The creatures glowed. The violet and purple radiance emanated from their skins as though they were giving it off. But what was it? He peered again at the zombie people. They were hypnotized now, and soon they would have the radiation sickness. Every one of the people who had returned from this hole, including Wes, was dying of radioactivity. The source of it was here, not in the hole itself, but in the glow of the creatures who inhabited it. It made sense. These giant sluggish things gave off a constant glow of radiation, which infected their captives and killed them. Sitting here in the glow, he was soaking up radiation too. He would die of it too. Hendricks had been here only a short time, a few days, and Hendricks had died. Wes had been here only 3 days, and Wes was dying. He knew then that he had to discover whatever there was to discover quickly, and get out. If he stayed in this hole too long, he would perish. He lifted his head, forgetting the pose. The time was short anyway, and he had to see. The hypnotic pull was ebbing somewhat. The monsters had their captives, and they could relax, devoting only a small amount of attention to the hypnotizing, using the rest of their energies for something else. A man rose from the group of new zombies and approached the semicircle of glowing things. He knelt down before them and remained there on his knees. At the far end of the cavern, 2 eyes were sailing back and forth. They swayed in the glow of the parent creatures, weirdly violet with flashing lashes, then falling into shadow. Link could guess where they belonged. The 2 giant things nearest to him were each minus an eye, lopsided with their single-orbed gaze. He couldn't stand this place any longer. The blackness of it, the violet glow cutting that blackness, the swaying eyes popping in and out of sockets were too much to bear. He had to get out. He felt the panic and rush inside him and got up on his knees. The man was still kneeling before the circle of creatures like a sacrifice in some ancient ritual. He had no hope of deciphering that ritual, and he had no time. He leaped to his feet and ran through the cavern toward the ramp, following the glow backward from its greatest strength to its weakest. He leaped over the tired bodies of the zombie people, pushed others out of his way, toppling them over like dominoes in his wake. Behind him, he heard a swish of air, and the new harsh pull at his mind told him the eyes were giving chase. He made the foot of the ramp and veered to climb it. Ahead it was pitch black. The glow faded part way up, and after that he would have to run blind. He darted to the wall. Running his hands along the vertical dirt gave him direction. Glancing over his shoulder as he struck the blackness, he saw 2 eyes coming after him, still lighted by the glow, purple and staring. He ran harder, his legs knowing the way out of terror. Faint light washed some of the black away as he neared the sunlight, and finally he could see his path again. The vision gave him an added spurt, and he clawed his way on, using his hands against the wall as leverage for his weakened legs. When he gained the ramp entrance, a shock like a great fist struck his brain, and an unnatural blackness rushed to engulf him. He fell forward, his fingernails clutching the ground and filling with dirt. He fought and struggled in the prone position. He writhed to his knees and opened his eyes against the hammering that wanted to beat them shut. He was encircled, the tiny center of a circle of 6 flying eyes. They had him cornered, and united they were pounding at his consciousness, beating him into submission. He hated them, and he thrust the hate at them in great stabs, but they were too many. They absorbed the stabs and battled back. His brain was numbing, the swirls and shadows verging into hypnotic visions, and he was deathly tired. It was an effort just to move. His limbs felt 3 times their normal weight. With a desperate effort, he inched his hand toward his pocket, then into it. He grasped the hard shapes of the tear gas bombs. He pulled them out slowly, every motion of his muscles an ache along his nerves. Arrowing hatred from his mind at the eyes, he drew back his hand and let the bombs fly. They hit, and the gas bloomed and billowed. He covered his face as the eyes disappeared into the fog. He tried his legs again. They still wouldn't move. Then, in the middle of the try, they became mobile, and the strain he was putting into them sent him sprawling out of the gas on momentum alone. As he hit the ground, he rolled away from the mist. His eyes burned and watered, and he felt that he would choke. But when his body lost its rolling speed, he scrambled to his feet and ran, back along the trail through the woods. If he could just run far enough, he would find help. The National Guard was entrenched here somewhere, and they would help him. He ran. His thumping feet jarred his body and his overtaxed heart. Saliva seeped out of his mouth, and he was afraid to sample it for fear of finding blood. Still, he ran. He broke into a clearing, and something bobbed up in front of him. He shrieked once and fell. Unconsciousness beckoned, and he clutched it, not caring any longer where it led him. The sun was on its early fall journey downward when he awoke. He sat straight up, but hands caught his shoulders and laid him back. "Take it easy," someone said. "You're all right now." He looked up into the blurred face of a tall man, and as his foggy vision cleared, he saw gray eyes and a smooth skin with tired lines and the flash of ribbons on a uniform blouse. "National Guard?" he asked. "Yes, you ran right into us. What was after you, anyhow?" "Eyes." "Oh," the other man grunted. "No wonder you were so desperate." "They didn't follow me then?" "Not into our position, anyway." The man stood up. "My name's Kelroy, Lieutenant Kelroy. Whoever you are, buddy, you look like you've been to hell and back." "I have. I'm Link Hosler from the Space Lab." "And just what were you doing out there?" "I was in the hole." Kelroy's expression clearly showed doubt. "I was," Link argued. "I went in and came out again. I know what's down there now. I've got to get back and report." Kelroy still looked doubtful, and Link didn't blame him. It was a crazy story. "Look," Link said, "if you've got a hookup, get hold of Dr. Iverson or Colonel Stanley. They'll vouch for me." "Do you know Stanley?" "Of course. I've been working with him." "Then do you know about the attack we made the other day against the hole?" Kelroy was pumping him for confirming knowledge. "I watched the whole thing from the fire tower in the woods. I saw your boys get taken. As a matter of fact, the tear gas was my idea in the first place. Only I never intended it to be used that way. It's not a weapon." Kelroy grunted again. "Tear gas, huh?" he said. "You're not by any chance the guy who captured one of those eyes, are you?" "I am. I have it caged in my lab right now." Kelroy nodded quickly. "Okay, I believe you. If you were anybody else, I'd order you to stay in bed for a while, but with the information you must have, I'll send you to the lab in a jeep. Express." "Thank heaven I ran into a sensible man," Link sighed. "And a scared one. If you've got anything at all to help solve this mess, I want it put to use, and fast. Come on, I'll drive you back myself." End of Chapter 13.